Hey guys, just give us a couple of minutes just to get a couple of things set up here. If our audio is out of whack, someone please tell us in the comments because we didn't know last time and it was terrible. Shouldn't be, but we never know. So
Here we are. Just waiting for people to join the chat.
no one loves us.
No.
No one loves us. One person.
Someone's here.
Hello, whoever you are.
Hello, Nicholas. How are you? Let us know if the audio is good or not. Enough about you, Nicholas. How about us?
We are playing Call of Duty all night again.
It's good. Sweet.
That's two people.
So we'll just wait for a couple of people to join us and then we'll get straight into our topic today, which is all about equipment we have on our tanks and our experiences with it.
Should we share it? Sorry guys, we're trying to just share the link with our Facebook page and it's not working for some reason. Probably user error. So we're not doing that. Alright, got 3 on. How's everyone's morning going? Have you got coffees? Or beer if it's that time of day wherever you are? Coffee for us.
Yeah, so as you know, it's a Sunday morning here, so second day of the weekend.
Yep. There's 3 people we lost someone. Come back.
That's good. We might just start.
Yep.
into it.
Yep. We're just going to start for our 2 people following, watching.
So over the last 12 months, we've had obviously a rocky journey with Reefzilla and our other tank. In that time, we've learned a lot about reefing, but we've also learned a lot about the equipment we've used as well. So
we went on a bit of a equipment buying spree when we probably shouldn't have, didn't need to, wasn't necessarily as important as it should have been.
yeah,
We thought that would solve our problems.
yeah. So first of all, equipment doesn't necessarily solve your problems.
No.
Sometimes it can confuse the problem. We try and keep things simple here. Hey Victor.
Oh, Rita. Hey, Rita.
So our reefing journey, we try and keep things simple. Our sump is fairly simple. We've got 2 reactors, a skimmer, a Clarissy filter,
Simple.
and a return pump. So it's not, compared to some setups, it is relatively simple.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably the main things we purchased, the big ticket items we purchased last year was the Neptune Apex, the Reef Wave was another big one. Those were probably the two main ones, weren't they?
Yeah.
But so there are some good equipment out there. The ones we've never had problems with is first of all Ecotec and their lights.
We love the Radions. We've had them since day one.
So that's going on 5
One
years.
of those two there, I think it's that one there.
Yeah.
That one there is the one that we've had since day one, literally day one. It went on the Red Sea when we got it, and we haven't had a problem with it since. Fan goes a bit noisy every now and then. Give it a clean, it's all good to go again. So.
Yep. Obviously, when they were on ReefLink was the issue, not not the Radion lights. ReefLink, it just dropped out all the time, even when it was connected by a cable. So. Yeah, so ReefLink was the issue there. Since we've upgraded to Mobius, I know a lot of people have had problems with Mobius. We had no issues whatsoever. We went on the better version of the app.
We were lucky enough to actually score a chip for our original Radeon, which didn't come with the Bluetooth.
Yeah.
Bluetooth chip in it. We were lucky enough to score one of those when we were at Macna back in 2019. The guys at Ecotec said, "Here you go." Okay. But yeah, we went straight on to the beta as soon as we had the opportunity to, which was very, very early, and we've had no problem. It's been great.
Yeah, like it did take a little while to update, but being a better program, we expected that. But ever since then, we haven't had any issues whatsoever, which has been really good.
That's right.
We find the Mobius app is nice and easy to use, easy to understand. It's easy to reset some of the lights and things like that. So.
And Darren's in the process now of increasing the intensity of the lights a little bit every 2 to 3 weeks, isn't it?
Every fortnight, every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks, there you go. To bring the lights back up to a brighter.
Yeah, so at the moment I'm at 79%, I think. So, especially for the SBS we've got in the system now, make them nice and bright. We have no issues with SBS under them so far, but obviously we're new to the SBS game, so we will soon see. But they seem pretty bright.
Yeah. The other Ecotec bit of equipment we have is the MP10, which is over on my tank over there. We've had it once again since day one. We brought the light and the MP10 at the same time. The MP10's been going really well. In the last couple of weeks, it's started to get really, really noisy and rattly. So we think it's on its way out, but it is a 4 or 5 year old.
5-year-old piece of kit.
Piece of kit that's been running day in, day out since then, no rest. So it's, I'm happy with that lifespan. So
Yeah.
It's if you get that sort of lifespan out of all your gear, you'd be happy. So
Yeah. The other brand we really like is Red Sea. So we've got a few things. We've got the Red Sea tank, which we've had no issues with at all.
Yep.
I think once we had a bit of a leaky pipe when we moved it, but that's to be expected.
that's our fault.
Yeah.
It's no one else's fault. So.
The silicon's been fine, so we've had that for 5 years as well.
Yep.
We recently got the Reef Wave, which I love. It's a great.
Long as going to put it back together.
Yeah, except for user error.
Green goes with green and red goes with red.
But it's nice and easy to clean. We've also got the reef LEDs on Gordon's tank as well.
Yep, I do love those lights. They're nice and clean, nice and simple, and just they look good on top of my tank. So yeah, I'm really happy with them.
And again, with the app, the controllability is nice and easy. It does take a little bit of time to get used to the app. It could be a little bit clearer in places, and that's mainly when selecting options and things like that. You think you've selected it and you really haven't, because you have to press save first. But that's user error, and once you get to know that, it's pretty easy. I know a lot of people have had problems with the app with that as well, particularly with connecting to the app.
We have very strong, very good Wi-Fi here at home. and I think that's important.
Yeah, I
If you're
think
trying to run it off a mobile network, it probably is not going to work that well. You need a solid. Well, my thoughts are you need a solid internet connection, a solid Wi-Fi connection to actually make it work. So,
exactly right. Yeah. What else have we got? Red Sea. Red Sea. We also use their supplements. We really
Skimmer.
like them.
Skimmer.
And then the Skimmer.
We do love our skimmer.
To be honest, it's probably the best skimmer I've used. We've only had two. But
Best out of two.
best out of two. Things I like about it is when you clean it, it actually comes clean. The plastic used in it seems to be like Teflon. You just give it a simple wipe and it just comes clean. It doesn't discolor.
Yeah.
Every time you clean it, it just looks like a brand new skimmer, which is, I think, really important because it keeps up the whole performance of the equipment. So
He just needs to clean them more often.
yeah, do indeed.
Everyone just butting in there for a second. Make sure our audio is all good again, guys. So there's 6 of you on now. So anyone is having issues, we are watching the chat down here. Just let us know if we are having audio issues. We don't want that same one we had last time we went live. My fault.
Yeah. Other good thing about the Red Sea Skimmer is that it's got the cleanable neck, which makes a big difference. Means you don't actually have to take it off.
And that drain hose.
And that drain hose, like that's a godsend, especially when it's overflowing.
Last night.
Like all skimmers, you know, they can start overflowing. Usually, what happens with ours is that I'm trying to tune it, and I tune it a tiny bit, and that tiny bit too much is when it starts overflowing. So, but that drain hose is awesome for those situations. You can just filter out the first bit of gunk that's in the bottom, and then fill up your bucket with all the water that's just overflowing, and that's usually clean, so you can just chuck it back into the sump, which is really good. Yeah, we've really had no issues with that whatsoever. It's always had really good performance.
This is not a Red Sea sponsored video by any means, but we are big advocates of the Red Sea gear.
And it's mainly because we found in our situation that yes, it's a little bit more expensive in some cases, but you get what you pay for.
Yep.
Not all reefing equipment is like that.
No, that's right.
So that probably brings us on to our Neptune Apex. So don't get me wrong,
It's a bit of a love-hate relationship.
it's a love-hate relationship. And the main thing with that is probably the conductivity probe that measures salinity. It drives me nuts. Mainly because apparently it doesn't like bubbles. Even though we have it in a bubble-free section of our sump, it somehow still gets bubbles in it. So the hard thing about that is online when you're trying to fix it, it does take a bit of digging to actually determine that's the cause of it. That's one thing, is like it's hard to find out what the issue is.
Yeah, suddenly your salt will be sitting nice and steady where it should be for ages, and then bang, you'll just increase to stupid
50.
numbers. Yeah, and
It'll drop to 25.
Yeah, and the first time it happens, you freak out, especially if you're 200 kilometers from home, like it happened to us. But then you sort of quickly realise that it's just the norm, and you just go, okay, well, there's bubbles in it again. I'll just go fix it again.
Yeah. But yeah, even when you do get a heap of bubbles out of it by tipping it on its side and tapping it, like it still doesn't necessarily clear all the bubbles. Like at the moment we've had it going on for about a week, and at the moment it just wants to drop below the lower end of the scale there and set off an alarm. So that's probably the biggest thing, is the alarms on Apex can be incredibly annoying when it's not something to do with the actual tank. I feel there should be something in the programming to detect false flags, because it's a bit like when the boy cries wolf. You tend to ignore them, and then all of a sudden one of them is real, and that's the one that you need to know about.
That's
so
right.
the conductivity probe is an issue that Neptune knows about, but
Don't want to do anything about it.
yeah.
When they're still selling products, they're probably not going to do anything about it.
Yeah, so also with the Apex, we've got the ATK, so the auto top-off kit. That has an issue in itself. In the elbow bend that connects to the actual RO out, there's this tiny little pinhole. We found that's gotten blocked quite a few times, and it reduces the water flow, which causes the RO not to go into the sump and then another alarm. Now, I'm not sure why there's this tiny little pinhole there. Like, I know it's restricting flow, but there must be a better way of doing it. I just don't understand it. But yeah, another false flag, and it's incredibly annoying, unfortunately.
If anyone has any questions for us, wants us to bring any topics up, leave in the comments below and we'll get to them. So just leave a chat.
Yep.
There. So.
One of the other pieces of equipment we've got recently is the torque reactor. Don't mind the torque reactor, it has a few issues in itself. I wish the top of it was actually a screw-on instead of a pop-on, because it can just pop off with the water pressure if it gets a bit blocked. There's a piece of foam right at the top. If that gets clogged up, that can build the pressure and the top just pops off. Lucky ours is in the sump, so it just goes into the sump. But I have heard times where water's gone across the room because of the pressure. So I recommend not turning it up high either, because that's when you get issues as well. Also with the torque reactor, it is hard to get back onto the base, to get the base plate back on the bottom. There's a little notch, and if the notch doesn't line up at the bottom, it tends to just fall off, and then all of a sudden you've got meteor in the sump, so that's not fun either.
That's happened at least twice that I know of.
There's been a few times.
I think he's only changed the media twice, maybe 3 times that I know of.
Yeah, there's been a few times where we've vacuumed carbon and meteor out of the sump, so...
Good thing is that things aren't necessarily bad for your sump.
Yeah, that's it.
You just don't want it floating around.
What else have we got equipment-wise? Just trying to think.
Reactor.
Algae reactor, we've got an ALR light reactor.
Which we actually brought second-hand off a fellow reefer, and that is definitely a good way to get gear. It does save you a lot of money up front when you don't always have it. So.
And also, if you're actually buying it in person, you can get a rundown on its history, ask if there's any issues, you know, if you are buying from a nice person, you know, usually they're quite open about what the equipment is and how it's like, and help you set it up and things like that. So it is a good way to buy stuff in the hobby. But yeah, we've had no issues with that. That's really growing Chato like nobody's business. Like, we started off with probably like this much, and like it's about 3/4 full now. So it's really, really growing algae really nicely. Has anyone at home got equipment they want to talk about, or have any questions about equipment, or want to share their experiences, especially with the Apex, things like that? Just drop them in the comments below. I know Gordon's looking at me. We're both a bit tired this morning.
We're not hungover. We only had 1 beer last night, so people don't complain about hungover. We're definitely hungover. I just make up one.
Yeah. We've got a new dog, as you've seen in our videos, and he likes to sleep on the bed with us.
He's a big dog, and he takes up a lot of space on the bed. So I generally find myself up against the wall.
What was the return pump that we did have? The DC runner? The Aquamatic DC runner. We had 2 of those. We had one and replaced it.
But the first one we replaced because we had a power surge come through and it wiped out a lot of other gear in the house at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
But we replaced it again, and what happened? The control box just fused, didn't it?
yeah.
So the control box on the power cord just stopped working one day. Like, I think it gave a loud snap because we were actually doing some maintenance under there, and yeah, it just fried. So Aquametic is another love-hate relationship, I guess. When it works well. But yeah, I wouldn't say reliably that it's a piece of equipment that will last a long time.
Once again, it's the cheaper end of the equipment here in Australia anyway. So you only always pay for what you get. Or get what you pay for.
Yeah. Also, obviously, with equipment, a big thing that affects performance, especially with mechanical sort of things and pumps, is obviously your maintenance schedule. So if you're not maintaining it,
love your comment, Nick, but we'll edit that one for you.
that was a funny comment. As I was saying, maintenance of your reef equipment is very important. You've got to make sure that things are clean. So things like impellers on pumps are probably the biggest thing that you need to keep an eye on. Make sure every 6 months you set an alarm or something like that to clean things like that. Obviously, impellers usually attract snails and small worms and anything like that. Even a little bit will just like sit on an impeller and cause it to rotate off balance, and that affects your performance.
Yeah.
So,
And reduces its lifespan.
yeah, as Jake Adams says, with any sort of reef equipment, get to know it, pull it apart a couple of times when you first get it.
Know how it all pulls apart, know how it all goes back together, know how it works internally and externally, so you can see if there's something wrong straight away. So
Yeah, like we had a Deltec skimmer that was had a bit of an issue. It just stopped skimming. We found that one of the air intakes was clogged up with calcium.
thank you for staying up, the Derples. We appreciate it.
Good to see a couple more people joining us, which is nice. As we said before, if you have any questions, let them down there and we'll get to it.
Yeah, we will get to those questions and things at the end of the as we're starting to get to the end of the video. So
Yeah. But with the Deltec skimmer, we found it was calcified in the air intake, so if it can't suck air in, it can't produce bubbles.
yeah.
So it was an easy thing of just sticking a long pair of tweezers down the tube and unblocked it, and it's been working really good.
That was a bit nearly
A bit of a stabby.
But yes, it did. Once it worked, once it was cleared out, it was working again fine without any problems. So,
So Nick has asked us what are our goals in 2021 for our reef tank. So at the moment, we've got it surprisingly full. Thank you, Nick.
thank you, Nick.
Having SBS, a large range of SBS for the first time has been new to us. So at the moment, it's just wanting to see that survive and thrive.
Yeah.
Eventually, we'd like to have it at a point where we need to start making frags. So
That would be nice.
I don't think it will be this year, but very soon it could be a possibility of setting up a frag tank.
We actually have a frag tank downstairs sitting on its side. It doesn't hold water like that, but
No.
but we have one. Yeah, I guess the biggest goal for this year is just to keep the tank in a really nice state so that it looks visually appealing. It's running well, and we just don't need to stress about it. We want it to be a nice, calm year with the tank. So probably won't be any more major equipment. I can't see any major equipment need to be added to it.
No,
Like if things need to be replaced, that's a different story. But at this stage, I can't see anything needing to be added to the tank. Fish-wise, I don't think we're really going to need.
well, we don't need any more fish. Reefzilla has lost one fish this year, and that was Bugs, our rabbit fish. Unfortunately,
One of our originals.
yeah, we think he had an internal parasite, and he just basically wasted away really quickly in the end.
Yeah.
But fish-wise, I think we're stocked. It's mainly just to keep our coral happy, make sure we hone in on all the things we've learned and what makes this tank successful. And you know, it's going to be minor tweaks if everything keeps going the way it does.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, we added on. Well, we moved the dosing pump from that was on the Red Sea across a couple of weeks ago. We were going away for a weekend, and we needed something to keep dosing because we were using a lot of alk, and we had just started to use a little bit of calcium, like all of a sudden because of all the new coral that come in. So that's an old achromatic dosing pump. Achromatic?
Yep.
Yep. Nothing wrong with it, it's working well, but I think we will replace that with a better dosing, more accurate dosing pump, probably sometime in the very near future.
at the moment, it's one of those where it's not mobile friendly, so it's not controlled by an app. It's all manual, it's all button pressing and going through menus manually to try and
We do know that I do know that menu system very, very well. So yeah.
One thing that I'd like to point out is, like, with your equipment, try and get a digital copy of the instruction books on your phone.
That has helped so many times because especially with that dosing pump, we didn't use it. Well, we had it set up and didn't need to adjust it for a long time with the Red Sea, and then you move it and you sort of really need to recalibrate. Or you should be recalibrating on a regular basis. And I was like, how do we do this? So we actually had to. I searched through Google and I finally found a digital copy of the full instructions. And I've just saved that to my phone, so if I ever need it, I know where it is. That does make life really simple.
There's nothing worse than getting into an issue that you're having with a piece of equipment and not knowing where the instruction book is to try and resolve it.
Yeah.
So,
Because who keeps instruction books? Seriously.
yeah,
Who reads instructions?
being typical men, we don't.
So yeah, to answer your main question there, Nick, our goal for this year for Reefzilla specifically is to just keep it going the way it is right now. Keep stability, get that stability over a good 12-month period, and then probably take it from there. So well, I'm really happy with the way it looks at the moment. Darren seems to be very happy with the way it looks at the moment, which is always a good thing. So
Yeah, my mood basically is reflected by the tank. If the tank's not going good, Darren not happy.
Yeah.
And then he cops.
So, for the Red Sea, we unfortunately lost a couple of fish 2-3 months ago, very suddenly again.
Basically at New Year.
Yeah, over the New Year period, we lost the dog-faced puffer, unfortunately, and our two cinnamon clowns we'd had for years. So we're sort of we've only got the eel, a little filefish, and a chorus wrasse.
Chorus wrasse, yeah.
Mind you, the chorus wrasse is now coming out a lot more regularly, so
Because he's not being bullied,
by the clowns.
So basically, we've got a couple of options there. Like, eventually I would like to get a fish-only system so we can keep those nice angel fish and everything like that you can't really keep in a reef tank unless you want stuff to be eaten, like SBS or zoas and things like that. Or we've got the other option of reimagining the Red Sea, and in that case we're sort of thinking we'd love to do a clown harem tank.
I've always wanted a clown harem tank since day one, but yeah. But I also like my predators as well, so I do like my eel, and my ultimate fish, and Nick does have one at the moment, I'm just not ready for it, is the clown trigger. He's got a nice little tiny one about this big, and I want him, but I'm not ready for him. And that's my ultimate fish to put in my tank. Yeah, but the clown harem would definitely be a
nice addition.
yes, that's right.
Nick has asked, would we put an Apex Trident on the tank after having the issues? So the issues we've had with the Apex, like, they're just niggly, and it's more the fact that it deters me from actually enjoying the Apex and actually getting it to its full potential. Like, programming it is difficult. Like, you need to know a programming language. Like, it's hard to reset your upper and lower targets for email notifications. Like, things like that make it hard to actually work out, to really enjoy it and get the most out of the Apex. I think the Apex should be really for those that have a complex system on their tank.
Yeah.
Ours is relatively simple in comparison, and I don't think it's needed, and I think it's a bit of an overkill.
The Trident or the Apex?
The Apex.
Yeah,
So getting to the Trident, at the moment,
I'd love to not be doing. That's for water tests.
Yeah.
Yes. I would love to not be doing as many water tests and having something to automate that, but I don't think we need it, and it's not something that I just don't think we need it.
To be perfectly honest, we've been doing water tests on our ALK fairly regularly. It's one of the things that we actually make sure that it's regular.
Yeah, we use the henna elk tester, and we test. We either test daily to every second to third day, just depending on what time I get home of an afternoon and whether Darren remembers to get some water out to do the test with. But otherwise, we test. We test it at least once every couple of days.
And at the moment, with the new ALK with the new acros in the tank, it's actually quite steady.
It's been very steady, yeah.
So, like, if we were having issues where the ALK was fluctuating a lot and we weren't understanding why or when it was fluctuating, we might look at getting a Trident. But to be honest, I'd rather wait a couple of years and go for something that actually does multiple water tests, like the Mastertronic, things like that.
In saying that, if any of the companies out there, the brands out there, want to send us a Trident, we'll be happy to give it a go.
But in that case, we would actually make sure that it is sponsored content that we're producing. But yeah, with the Trident Apex, I think where we are at the system and how well we know our system now over the last 6 months particularly,
We don't need it.
I don't think it's needed. It's
It's an overkill.
It's really settled down.
Yeah. If we were going away a lot more often, we might be a thing we'd worry about as well. Something that could give us the results when we're not home. But we don't do that. We don't travel that much, especially during COVID.
No one's traveling a lot. So, but yeah, it's just more the fact that at the moment I think it's overkill. Like, I'd rather try and keep this nice and simple, and the simpler we have it, the more successful it seems to run.
Yes, that's
To
right.
be honest.
That's right.
I
The
think
the old term, KISS, keep it simple, stupid.
I think last year we were chasing our tails after adding everything new on, and we added it all within about 3 or 4 months. And every time we put something else on, it changed the whole tank.
I had to pull down aside and say, let's stop, let's add one thing, and then leave it for 3-4 months before we add anything else. And that's what we've started to do, and it has actually helped. So,
Yeah. Nick has asked if you could start over.
Andrea, yes, we never say no to free stuff, but at the same time, no, at this moment, we're not really interested in it. Apex trying.
Nick has asked if you could start over with your reef tank, what would you do differently? So this is a big one because we bought the tank second hand. The whole thing came with a lot of extras. It came up with a skimmer. What was the skimmer? It was a bashi.
Yes.
That was another piece of equipment we didn't like.
We just couldn't get it to work properly.
Yeah.
I
think at the time when we got this tank, we got some bad advice. We had basically a pond pump in the sump as a return pump, which is non-controllable. So
there's a full on or nothing.
Yeah, yeah. And yes, particularly with a reef tank, you need to have that controllability so you can regulate the level in your sump to keep it steady. So I think if we bought another second-hand tank, we would make sure that we use a lot of equipment that we were familiar with.
Yeah, I would probably, if we bought a second-hand tank, I would probably also strip out all of the plumbing on the back. Now that I've got a bit more of an idea of how it all works, and actually just re-plumb it from top to bottom, bottom to top, left to right, whichever way you plumb a tank.
Yeah, also with this tank we've got plumbing that goes,
it just goes everywhere. You're trying to follow where there's this pipe to go and come from, and yeah, I would start from scratch with the plumbing. We can probably do that now, but I would have to shut the tank down for a day to do that, and it's working. If it's not broken, don't fix it. So.
Well, we shouldn't say that because when it does break, we'll be going, ah!
Yeah. So, if it was a second-hand tank, I would definitely go along the lines of re-plumbing it all so I knew exactly where everything went, and knew exactly how it all worked, and made it as simple as possible in the back of the tank.
If we were setting up a new tank, I think again, using equipment that we know and know how it works and are familiar with is a big important thing. I think we'd still go sand, because even though we've had issues with the sand bed in the reef wave, kicking it up because it's an old sand bed, still prefer sand.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of bare bottom tanks. That's my opinion. I love sand on the bottom of a tank. I think it just looks more realistic, it looks more natural, and that's just the way I prefer it, and that's the way Darren prefers it as well, so definitely sand. If we're going off the shelf tank, I'd probably go another Red Sea. I do love the peninsulas, they are great looking tanks. If we had somewhere to put it, we don't need this house, there's nowhere in this house to put a peninsula, it just wouldn't work. We'd be walking around it all the time.
If I wanted a tank this big, I think I'd rather something with the Euro brace on top. Like, I love the Red Sea, but cleaning the glass near the top is just a nightmare because I don't like dirty glass on the outside, and every time you go near the surface of the water of a Red Sea, you spill water over the edge and down the front. That's the only thing I don't like about the Red Sea. It's a nice clean design, but also with the Euro brace, I find it's a very handy shelf when I'm in the tank, especially
Beer rack.
not
Beer
just
shelf.
a beer shelf. It's handy when you're gluing frags in. You've got somewhere to put the frags. You've got somewhere to put the glue.
Somebody put the beer.
He's got beer on the brain. It's like just after 9 a.m. It's a bit early for a beer.
More coffee. There's not enough coffee. Out of coffee.
But yeah, like, I think I'd prefer something with the Euro brace. Not sure which brand or anything like that.
I think if we're going to get another tank, we're probably not going to get a custom built tank anyway, to be honest, to get the size and shape we want. So
Yeah,
I don't think we'd buy another off the shelf tank at this stage.
Unless it was something that we could fit into a particular corner of the house or in a particular space.
Well, look, I love the all Red Sea tanks. I think they all look fantastic. I've never seen a Red Sea tank that I haven't liked. I'm not a fan of tops on tanks, plinths or whatever you call them on top tanks. So I think all the Red Seas are just fantastic looking tanks. They're nice, clean lines. Put a net cover on it to keep your fish from jumping out. You can't see the net cover when you're looking at it unless you're looking from the top or from below. Yeah, they're a great tank. Red Sea's a great brand. Not sponsored. Red Sea's a great brand. Great brand. They're great tanks.
And like with the seams, as long as you're careful, like, okay, to be honest, the whole seam splitting thing with the Red Sea tank, I can't see happening. There's so much silicon there that I just don't understand how they're failing. Because in our experience, we were told when we got a Red Sea tank that we should be careful cleaning around that silicon on the edges. Yeah, I never have been.
No.
I've been pretty hard, rough as guts, and there's really no way of I can't see it failing unless someone's doing something to it. Someone's abusing it, whether it's in transport or what happened.
Yeah.
I think the likelihood of those seams failing is pretty minimal. And I have seen in the newer models that they've actually got extra silicone down those corners as well. With the sumps, like we were with Nick when he changed over a tank to a Red Sea.
Last week's video.
Yep, last week's video. That I couldn't believe how easy the plumbing is. It is literally dropping pipes into the overflow, screwing them in, and then screwing them in from underneath.
They've got clips to keep the pipes up against the wall.
Yep, they've got clips to keep them steady so they don't vibrate. It's like literally the simplest sump setup ever.
Yeah.
And like, especially with the bigger Red Seas, they've got a decent sized sump where, you know, if you're just putting a skimmer in, it's really big. They've got an additional partition to actually partition it off to put a refugium in, which is really good. Like, and yeah, the stand's always been good. There's no issues with the stand either.
We've had no issues. I mean, our Red Sea it's getting on now, and the doors don't always shut properly, but that's probably because we haven't really adjusted them properly. And the hinges have rusted a little bit. Once again, it's a 4 or 5 year old tank, and it's around salt water. Metal's going to rust. That's just what's happened. So.
And it's not like we take care of it.
Exactly. It's been neglected in that sense. But yeah, the stand's still holding up nicely. We're going to have good Red Sea tanks. So. Yeah.
Big D from the UK has asked, are there any corals that you've put in your tank and you've regretted? Yes, all the ones that have died. And it's mainly because they've died because the tank wasn't ready for them. So seriously, it is really important to go slow with corals, especially anything that's pricey. Like, I've got a bucket, like a 20-litre bucket, which is a 5-gallon bucket, I think that works out to, full of coral skeletons. And
Sad. Really.
it's really, mind you, that's over 5 years, but we've lost an awful lot of coral. But specifically for any coral that has caused issues, no. Like, I haven't really had any coral that's caused issues, but then again, I've also kept them in zones, so LPS in certain sections and SPS in others, so they don't mix. Probably, there is a coral I would recommend everyone have, and that's a Duncan. I find it to be a great indicator coral of the health of your tank. If it's not opening, as what happened last year, we had Duncans in our tank and they just started throwing heads out. Duncans don't do that unless there's something very wrong.
There was.
And there was. So as soon as that started happening, that's when I knew that we needed just to stop and calm down with the tank and let it settle, because Duncans don't do that. Also, Zoas are a good indicator of your tank. If they're not opening up, there's something wrong. A lot of people have said over the years that my tank can't grow this coral. I used to think that too, but I now think that if you can't grow a certain coral and it just keeps dying or it's not successful, there's issues with the tank that you don't know about. I think if your tank is stable and steady, there should be no issues growing corals, especially easy corals like GSP, Xenia, things like that. I've heard people not be able to grow those type of corals and Zolas. It's just like, if you can't grow those, there's either A, something's eating it, or B, there's something wrong with your tank.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, it's B.
Yeah. Big D again. On that note, what was your most extensive loss? Fish.
Yeah, so
When we lost our most of our tank due to ink back in 2019.
We just put in a powdered blue tang and a
Angel.
majestic angel,
Yeah.
and they're not cheap over here, unfortunately, and we lost both of them
Yeah.
within 2 months.
And plus quite a few other fish at the same time. So I think that's probably our biggest loss in that sense.
Coral wise, I've lost a nice scully.
Yeah.
That was a bit expensive. That was probably the most expensive, was a really nice scully. So I've tended to keep away from nice, big, expensive corals.
We haven't put a lot of expensive fish or coral into the tank over the last 12, 18 months because of those issues. We're wanting to make sure that the tank is running perfectly before we start spending big money on big ticket items.
I also think that like a lot of the more expensive coral is hyped up by people who want your money.
Yeah.
Like we've got SBS, we've got one that has a name, and that's because it's a common Australian SPS that nearly every Australian tank has, which is a Dallas coral. The rest are all generic. They're all, the majority of them at the moment are wild colonies as well. And like, there's no need for expensive coral in your tank if you're new, starting out, or your tank's unstable. Because if you can get corals to grow, it doesn't matter what that coral is, if you get it to a nice big colony, it looks beautiful. There's not a coral in our hobby, except brown pallies, that don't look nice in a big colony. So just concentrate on growth of your corals, and I think you'll have a tank that you actually enjoy and appreciate, instead of getting frustrated at putting expensive corals in and having them die.
Yep.
The one piece of equipment that you most regret putting onto your system, yeah, I think Nick's got it on the head there, was the calcium reactor.
Yeah.
We won a calcium reactor at Reef Stock.
We did win it, but it was apparently a calcium reactor.
It never worked for us.
I'm sure it works for other people, but it never worked for us.
Yeah, it was by an acrylic manufacturer here in Australia, and they swear by this. It's a very simple, it should work on paper, but it wasn't pressurized, it wasn't sealed, and we found it just dumps in calcium willy-nilly.
The other thing is, talking calcium reactors for a minute, our tank, up until now, our tank hasn't used enough supplements, hasn't used enough calcium, enough alkalinity or magnesium to actually need a calcium reactor. We've only been dosing very little amounts. We'll be dosing, 10 mil, 12 mil of alk?
Yeah.
Every day. We're barely dosing calcium, and we're not dosing magnesium at the moment. And we are testing those things weekly to make sure those major ones, obviously alk's every day, but the other two are weekly. And we're not finding we are needing to dose much. So not until, my thoughts, and I could be completely wrong here, my thoughts are, unless your tank is using a lot of supplements, you don't need a calcium reactor.
I also think a lot of people get distracted by supplements and what they need to dose as well. If your tank's not stable, there's no real accurate way of working out how much your tank is or is not using.
Yeah.
Like for the longest time, we've had tanks that have been unstable, and it looks like we're using no supplements. So I would recommend in that case, stick to the basics. Do water changes. We do 20% water change every week. It's been the best thing we've done on the tank. It's
Artificial red sea salt as well. So
yep,
we have easy access here to natural salt water here in Australia. We can get it quite easily. We have a 1,000 litre tank downstairs that we can put water in. It's been empty for 6 months because it's this better, for us, our opinion, it's better to be using the artificial salt.
Yeah, so all those hobbyists out there that are not doing water changes, they're not doing water changes because their tank's 4 or 5 years old. I reckon for the first 2-3 years of the life of the tank, regular water changes will help keep your tank steady. And when you get it steady, that's when you can work out precisely what your tank is and isn't using. Usually a water change every week will help with those supplements that you're missing anyway. So there's no real point to changing it.
Yes, definitely the name game did ruin coral prices for everyone. I agree. 100%.
Sump maintenance. Okay. So sump maintenance goes into what we were talking about before and basic equipment maintenance. Yes, we are keeping the sump relatively clean. Every now and then it does need a good vacuum.
Just like any sump, it is going to build up detritus, and we just get out the vacuum on a water change. We can dump the water out of the sump, and that's equivalent to what we would normally do from the top. So, or close enough to it.
Yeah. Talking about sump maintenance, there's one piece of equipment I know I haven't cleaned since we got it, and that's the Clarissy. So with the Clarissy, we had issues with that.
There is a brand new roll sitting up there.
Yeah, we had issues with that when I first put it on. Okay, Clarissy, let me start from the start. It is the most confusing thing to put together with the instructions that are included. Like, we are both proficient in doing IKEA flat packs. We're good at diagram instructions, not an issue. This has photographed instructions. They're photographed from different angles, so it's not the same consistent perspective. There's photographs there that you don't know what's different from one photograph to the next. And none of the pieces are labelled. If you're doing a Clarissy, either get your local fish store to set it up for you and build it, or
if you've got to pay extra for it.
Yeah, or watch YouTube videos. We ended up with plastic parts, we had no idea what they were for. And we're going, this seems important, this is a big piece of plastic, what's it for?
And we had Nick here the day we put it together.
Yeah, yeah. The Clarissy, also loading the roll is particularly difficult if you don't know what you're doing. I lined the roll up on the wrong end of the roll. So we've got one roll here, and it was going on an angle between the rolls. And for the longest time I'm going, it doesn't seem to be rolling evenly. And yeah, that was a user error. Yeah, the roll is not easy to load. I would also recommend watching YouTube videos on that. When we have to actually change over to a new roll, we'll be doing a video on that, because I found a nice easy technique using staples of all things that makes the whole reloading of the roll a lot easier. So Clarissy can do your heading. Once you get it on there, it works brilliant.
They're a great piece of kit. They do keep the water nice and clean and clear at all times. They are a great piece of kit for that sense.
So much better
Just
than
putting,
filter
just
socks.
building them is a
Yeah. And also, it has an alarm on it.
Oh yeah.
The
I'm
alarm,
lucky. I'm slightly tone deaf, so I don't hear it most of the time.
the alarm is very quiet, but when the room is quiet, you can hear it. And if you don't know what it is, you go, what the hell is this beeping?
Yep.
And it just is non-stop until you actually fix it.
We and Eddie, yes, definitely get yourself a Clarissy. We don't regret that purchase by any means. They are definitely worth every cent. Just make sure you have them together, or get someone to do it for you.
Yep. And yeah, so much better than filter socks. Like we used to have issues with filter socks, especially, that's right, in this sump, it had filter socks because we reduced the height in the sump of where the previous person had it, because we didn't want extra water on wooden floors, we didn't want the extra weight. We had a waterfall situation go from our filter socks into the sump.
Yeah.
our tank was incredibly noisy for the longest time.
Yeah.
So with your equipment, make sure it's going to not make noise.
Extra noise.
Yeah, because there's nothing worse than a noisy reef tank. It doesn't need to be.
No.
And yeah, it's just incredibly annoying.
But and also, and to answer your question, yes, we are keeping up with the sump maintenance. We are keeping it nice and clean. I think in the last 3 months we've vacuumed it out at least twice, from memory, maybe 3 times. So yeah, we've got a Ryobi, which is a big brand here. I'm not sure if it is everywhere else, but Ryobi wet dry vac. We literally just siphon out as much of the water as we can, get the wet dry vac, vacuum all the detritus out, and fill it back up again. Really simple. So.
Yeah, like probably the hardest thing setting up this tank was adjusting the height of the sump. Like
It was designed, the sump comes to about here somewhere, and it was designed to be at a running fill of about here somewhere. So basically there was really only about that much at the top of the sump that was your buffer, I guess. We run it about that far below the top of the sump. So,
yeah, so we
I'm not on camera, there we go.
we really are running it at probably a quarter of the height that it used to be at. Compared to when we started the tank, we're also running it very slow. So it's a very slow process of the water filtering through our sump. We find that the more time in contact the water has with all the filter equipment, the better they do their job, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got all the movement, like even the return pump back into the tank is not fireworks, it's pretty slow. So that case we have to
18% that pumps running out.
yeah, 18%. So we basically, all the flow up the top, we have to provide with wave makers. So now that it's starting to fill up, I'll probably get 1 or 2 little extra wave makers just to randomise the flow even further and make sure that we've got enough flow, especially for the SBS. But besides that, eventually I'd probably like to get a 3rd Radion.
Nick Lee, biggest medical sponsorship.
But yeah, like at the moment, it's plenty big enough. We've got the equipment the way we like it, and we don't have issues anymore.
Yeah.
Like
And for those who don't know or haven't seen any of our previous video or early videos when we put this tank in, the reason we're running the sump lower than it originally was designed for is because we're in what's called a Queenslander house. So this is an old style house with timber floors. Below where we're sitting here is nothing, just dirt, but it's about 6 foot down. Like 6 foot of nothing between the floorboards and the ground underneath. So as it is, the whole system is about 800 litres, so what's that,
180 gallons.
Yep. So it weighs a lot, plus the full metal stand, full tank. I think we worked it out to be about 1,000 kilos or a tonne sitting here in one little spot. So, and being on a timber floor, we were concerned that it was going to go through the floor. We did a lot of work under the house to make sure it was all propped up and stuff like that, and luckily it hasn't moved. Knocking on wood, because it it hasn't moved in the 2 years it's been sitting here. So it's yeah, so we're quite happy with that. But I wouldn't want to put any more water if we didn't have to.
Yeah, exactly. Like we've got metal struts under there to actually hold the weight, and we've reinforced the structure underneath as well. So.
Anyone else got any other questions? I think we've caught up with everyone. Yeah. Anyone else?
Just while we're waiting for anyone, if they want to do any questions, you might notice we are wearing our new shirts. You can get these at 2gayreefers.com.
Yep. So when you go to the site, it's hopefully pretty self-explanatory, but if you're in Australia, go to the Australian map or the Australian flag, whichever I put there, I think it's Australian map, and purchase from there. If you're anywhere else in the world, purchase from the other part. Reason being, here in Australia, we go through one avenue, which is a local supplier for the shirts. Everywhere else goes through a worldwide distributor for the shirts. So yeah. All you're doing is supporting us, giving a little, we get paid a couple of dollars for the shirts, you're supporting us, and you get to wear a great looking shirt.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well-
you choose your colour you want it on.
Yep. And we're also planning on expanding the range shortly, so
I think there's face marks as well on there if you have a look.
yep.
I think.
I
I
can't
think I can't remember if I put them on, took them off again, but there is pretty much face masks there, so if you still happen to wear face masks, like we don't, then you can wear a 2 Gay Reefers face mask. There is stickers, but don't buy the stickers, I'm going to remove them because they're shit.
Yeah, we're not quite happy with the
No.
quality. For some reason they decided to not cut them out in circles.
Yes, that was really weird.
What's the next step with the tank? So at the moment, Eddie, the next step with the tank is to stability, just keep it stable. So at the moment, like, we know the tank's stable, but it's more the fact that we're paranoid that it could just be undone in like 2 seconds
Overnight.
and everything will crash.
Yeah.
So we're still at that stage where we're going, we're doing everything right, we know we're doing everything right, we just don't have the confidence behind us to back it up, basically. So the next step for the tank is really just to, when I do an update video, you'll actually see how full it is with SBS up the top. I actually bought some coral yesterday, because I'm a coral addict.
Yeah, it's a problem.
But we can't
And
really...
Nick is an enabler.
Yeah, Nick is an enabler, our sponsor. We can't really put a lot more wild colonies in there, which is what we had. So it's going to be a lot of frags. To be honest, probably the one thing I'd like to put more of in the tank is Monty plates, so plating Monty. We've got a few tiny little frags, they're just starting to grow, so once they grow I'd like to put a few more of those around the tank, especially around the back where they've got room to grow and will look really good from top down. But the main thing is our fish population we're happy with, especially since we've got the chromas. So we've got a school of 7 chromas in there. They're probably one of my favourite fish. For being such a basic fish,
Yeah.
I love watching them school. They hide within the corals. I've got one chromis that sleeps behind this blasto colony that we've got at the front. So it's really cute. Of a morning he just puts his head out. The main step for the tank is to have stability and enjoy it. Like last year we did not enjoy the tank.
Not
It
Which
was-
made doing videos for you guys really difficult as well.
That's why we had the break.
Yeah.
Like, we just needed to get back in the game, settle the tank down, and have stability. Because we were for a long time just doing videos showing our problems, and like people don't want to watch that.
I know a lot of you enjoy, well not enjoy, but like seeing the problems because you know that we're being real about it. We are being real about everything we do, but also not everyone wants to see problem after problem after problem. People want to see a beautiful looking tank when they're watching videos. They don't want to see, oh yeah, there's this dying and this dying, and this isn't working, and yeah.
Yeah, well, that's okay up to a point, I guess. Last year we got to that point and took a lot of big steps over it.
Yeah.
Eddie, I have been thinking about putting GSP on the back wall. Like, especially with our back wall design, we have a glass back wall, but in the middle where the teeth are for the overflow is an acrylic panel. The acrylic panel likes to grow coralline algae and the glass likes to grow green algae. It's not very noticeable except when you look at it in certain light. I would like to grow some GSP on the back wall. I like the look of it, and it's not something that you see a lot of in such a big tank. But yeah, I'm still out on that. Probably wouldn't mind growing some branching SBS off it at a later date. But at the moment, the back wall is sort of confusing because it's not something I can clean either. Because the way we've got our light support is it's got 2 steel posts down the back of it, so you can't even get a magnetic cleaner along the whole back to clean it. So, and I'm not scraping it. It's just too much work. But yeah, GSP is something that I've finally been able to grow. That was one of the corals that I went, I can't grow this. And that's because our tank was just not set up for GSP, which sounds terrible, but if you can't grow those basic corals, you're gonna struggle with anything else, really. But yeah, GSP, maybe some macro, depending on how much real estate I need or want.
Cool. Anyone else got any more questions?
We've been going for just over an hour now.
Wow. Okay. That too. Well, thank you everyone for jumping on. Really appreciate everyone's support. We appreciate every single view that we get, every single comment we get, every single like we get on the videos. We really, really appreciate it.
We appreciate all the great feedback we get too. Like, a lot of people like that we keep it real, and that's like what we try to do. Like, we have got stuff from companies, but we try and say if we have.
Yep.
We don't try and hide our opinions behind us not saying that we got it for free.
Yeah.
To be honest, like, we don't care if we get free stuff.
We like it.
We like
We
it,
don't
but
care.
there are YouTubers out there, as everyone knows, that
We
like,
don't,
thrive on that.
Yes.
And
Nick, our sponsor from Nick's Aquarium, has definitely helped us out over the last 6 months, and we appreciate that every single time. Him and Ashton, we love them to death.
yeah,
Little Fletcher, we love them to death. So thank you guys for helping us over the last 6 months with the tank. The last, 2 years now, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I'd love to say too is, I know everyone's enjoying the tank and how it is. If you've got any suggestions, if you've got anything you'd like to hear us talk about, anything you'd like to see in future live streams, tell us how we did.
Let us know if you like this format as well. Like, we can do this. This is not hard for us to do. It actually saves, means we don't have to do editing. So let us know if you want us to see more videos like this, and we can do them.
Yeah, exactly right. But yeah, really, to be honest, with the comments we get on our YouTube channel,
Thanks, Eddie. Appreciate it.
they're a lot nicer than what I've seen on a lot of other people's channels, and we appreciate that. So
Yeah. We're not the biggest YouTube channel here in Australia for reefing, or in the world by any means, but we appreciate every single viewer that we have.
yep, agree.
Yep.
So anyway, I think we might wrap it up there.
Yep.
I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you enjoyed the live stream format.
If you want a shirt, gayreefers.com, grab one. Help us out.
As always, be excellent to each other and keep it salty, everyone.
See you guys.
Catch you later. Bye.
Where do we stop it? Stop X.